Coming up.
Yesterday, the government House Leader, Karina Gould, stated on CBC that the government has complied with the House order to turn over documents related to the Green Slush Fund. Could you confirm that pursuant to the House order, the government is required to turn over all documents related to the Green Slush Fund on an unredacted basis?
Thank you for the point of order.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Resuming our discussion on Bill C-65, C-65. That is the bill that will make changes to the Elections Act. So with that, I would like to welcome back Mr. Eric Jantz, Clerk of the House of Commons, Stéphane Aubé, the Chief Executive Administrator, Michel Bédard, the Law Clerk and Parliamentary Counsel, Patrick McDonnell, Sergeant at Arms, Jeffrey Leblanc, the Deputy Clerk Procedure, and Benoit Dicard, the Chief Information Officer. Mr. Cooper, the floor is yours for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Since we are on the subject of a question of privilege and we have the law clerk, Mr. Bedard, before us, I want to ask Mr. Bedard some questions regarding the letter that he submitted to the Speaker yesterday relating to the question of privilege that has seized the House of Commons. Yesterday, the government House Leader, Karina Gould, stated on CBC that the government has complied with the House order to turn over documents related to the Green Slush Fund. Could you confirm that pursuant to the House order, the government is required to turn over all documents related to the Green Slush Fund on an unredacted basis?
Thank you for the point of order.
Yeah, Ms. Matheson on a point of order.
I would just like to call in relevance on that question, sir.
During that introduction from Mr. Cooper, I would agree. I'm not sure that it's relevant to the cyber attack. Mr. Cooper, I've stopped the clock. I'm going to give you, before we turn the floor to Mr. Bedard, an opportunity to maybe just explain where you see the relevance between, just one moment, just between what we've asked the House administration to be here today on and this, and then I can help inform a decision. So if you can just clarify, and that will help us dictate where we go from here.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Chair. It is relevant insofar as this is a matter dealing with a question of privilege. We have a question of privilege that is seized, the House is seized with. The law clerk is here before us. He sent a letter yesterday to the Speaker relating to that question of privilege. The government House Leader has made certain representations, and I wish to pose questions related to whether the government has complied with its requirement to turn over documents to the law clerk pursuant to the House order. We also have, and how it also ties in to this question of privilege, is that we have documents that the government has withheld from this committee related to this question of privilege. So it's part of a pattern of obstruction and non-disclosure by this government.
Okay. On the point of order, Mr. Turnbull.
By that argument, anything referring to a question of privilege would be relevant to this committee proceeding today, and that's not the case. Obviously, this is about a particular issue that witnesses have been called here to answer to the committee members' questions, and I think we should stay focused on what is relevant to this committee, which is in the notice of meeting. If we need to maybe read that back to Mr. Cooper, I'm sure he can read himself, I assume.
Okay, I've got Mr. Duncan and then Mr. Garrettson on the same point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the point is where what Mr. Cooper laid out is this is about the government's record and the seriousness in which they take questions of privilege, and in the case here of document production. So yes, sadly, there are many questions of privilege being dealt with. Our committee deals with them and is primarily tasked with dealing with them. But in terms of the relevance, it's absolutely relevant when we look at other document production requests that the government has, and Mr. Cooper laid out, the government incorrectly asserting yesterday that they are providing all the documentation on a question of privilege when they're not. So it is absolutely relevant to this of showing and demonstrating that the government is not taking document production seriously, including in this question here for us, and another one that's ongoing right now. So I think it's absolutely relevant to get the scope and a confirmation from the law clerk who's here about whether the government on other questions of privilege, other requests for document production is meeting that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Duncan. Mr. Gerritsen?
Well, notwithstanding the fact that I would love to engage in this discussion with Mr. Cooper, because I would love to read out about how Larry Brock, a Conservative member, has made comments to the effect of, if you want to get a document, you go to court and ask for warrants for production of works, of documents. I'd love to get into that discussion too, and notwithstanding that, perhaps Mr. Cooper and I will have another opportunity to debate that at another time, but I would completely concur with the comments from Mr. Turnbull, and to be fair, your initial assessment of this, Mr. Chair, of trying to find where the relevance is here. The only thing both Mr. Cooper and Mr. Duncan have been able to offer is that, well, they both have to do with questions of privilege. And to Mr. Turnbull's point, and to your initial assessment of this, that is not displaying, they have not in any way whatsoever shown you what you asked for, which is to demonstrate where the relevance is.
Okay, thank you very much, folks, for your contribution. So, colleagues, this is what I'm going to do. Mr. Bedard, I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond as you see fit to the discussion that we've been having briefly. Mr. Cooper, I'm going to ask, when the clock has been stopped, when the floor returns to you, that we look at bringing our line of questioning back into what we've invited our witnesses to have here today. So let's just provide the opportunity.
Point of order?
Yeah, Mr.
Are
Gerritsen.
you extending this opportunity to everybody then? So when it's my turn, will I be able to ask a completely irrelevant question, but then the follow-up questions will have to be relevant? I just want to know so that I'm well prepared.
I may reject the premise of that, Mr. Gerritsen, but my rulings will be consistent. So I am going to afford Mr. Bedard just an opportunity to respond. Let's see where we can get here. But Mr. Cooper, if following that response, we can try to bring us back to specifically the question of cyber attacks, I think that would be in all of our best interests. Mr. Bedard, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As regards a comparison between the current study and the question of privilege that is currently debated in the House, I will note a few things. First of all, for the current study, this committee has received an order of reference from the House. So the motion, the privilege motion has been passed, and this committee has been entrusted with the study. Secondly, the motion that the committee itself has adopted in May 2024 contemplated that government entities could make redactions. So the documents that were provided by the House, by other government entities, they included redactions, and at the House we were very mindful when we made the redaction of the fact that these had been authorized and actually asked by the committee. Now, if we go to the question of privilege that is currently before the House, and my letter of yesterday to the Speaker, which was tabled in the House on the same day, it's in line with the other letter that I provided to the Speaker. Documents have been ordered by the House on June 10. The order from the House did not contemplate any redaction. Some documents were withheld or contained redactions. In relation to previous letters, with that information before the House, a question privilege was raised, and the Speaker ruled that it constituted prima facie question privilege and allowed the appropriate motion to be moved that the matter be referred to this committee. I'll note that the Speaker also noted.
So Mr. Bedard, just on the matter of the documents that have been recently presented or produced and filed with you from ISED, from the National Research Council, and from Statistics Canada, those documents contain redactions and some have been withheld from you, correct? Relating to the Green Slush Fund. Okay. And so what you're confirming is that neither the House of Commons or the RCMP have all of the documents due to the government blacking out certain documents and withholding others, correct?
Excuse me, could you repeat this question, the last question?
Well, you're just confirming that you don't have all the documents, correct?
Based on the information I received from the government entities themselves, they put in their letter that some documents were withheld, and also just on the face of the documents, there are some redactions. So
That's right. And thank you for that. And I would note that Karina Gould yesterday on CBC asserted that all documents have been produced related to the Green Slush Fund. The government has turned over all documents. Let the record show that Karina Gould lied about
Mr. Turnbull, the floor is yours on a point of order.
I have to bring up relevance here because Mr. Cooper is referring to something else that is being currently debated in the House that I would note is being filibustered by the Conservatives for over 23 days now because they don't want that to actually be referred to this committee. But more importantly, this meeting is about a question of privilege related to cyber attacks targeting members of Parliament, which I thought was a serious issue that the Conservatives cared about. Obviously, Mr. Cooper has no questions with regard to this question of privilege, the one that this committee is supposed to be studying today. So I wonder if we can move on from his political attacks that are clearly not in line with what we're supposed to be talking about today.
Point of order.
Yes.
Rappel au règlement, Monsieur le Président.
Point of order, Chair. I have 2 points of order. First, Mr. Gerritsen, and then Ms. Gaudreau, and then I have something to say. Mr. Gerritsen.
Had not just an initial response from Mr. Bedard, but we've also had an exchange, and more went back and forth. So the door is swung wide open right now in terms of not having to be relevant. I would just like a ruling from you, Mr. Chair, as to whether or not you're shutting that door and you're going to force everyone to be relevant from this point, or whether we're going to continue on down this same path of entertaining, possibly entertaining in order to determine where to go. I think it's fair to everybody who needs to ask questions after this point, because I will completely change my questions if you're going to permit that kind of behavior for the rest of the meeting.
I appreciate your feedback, Mr. Gerritsen. Colleagues, what I was seeking, and Madame Gaudreau, I know that I have to come to you in a moment. Colleagues, what I was seeking was a compromise to help us start the meeting off in a place that could create some efficiency. I share the view raised by Mr. Turnbull and Mr. Gerritsen and previously by Ms. Matheson that at this point I'm seeing a divergence from relevance. Mr. Cooper does have a little bit of time remaining, so Mr. Cooper, when the floor does get returned to you, my hope is that you are going to bring us back to APT 31, or I will interject at that point because I do believe that we're veering a little bit too far off. Mr. Cooper, 5 minutes, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pursuant to an order passed by this committee, the government was required to turn over all documents related to this Beijing-directed cyber attack in their control by August 9th. At the end of last week, we received a document dump from CSE that's more than 3 months after CSE was ordered by this committee to turn over documents. I'd like to ask, through you, Mr. Chair, to Madam Clerk, whether through her communications with CSIS or CSE, if there are other documents that are pending.
Yeah, there's no relevance issue here. That's not what I'm asking the clerk about. I'm just going to turn the floor to her to respond directly to Mr. Cooper's question. There's no relevance issue.
Mr. Cooper and members of the committee, I reached out to CSC yesterday, and they informed me that they still had a substantial amount of documents that they still need to send to the committee, and that they agreed to give me a timeline to receive those by the end of this week. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Clerk, for that answer. And let me just say that this is completely unacceptable that the government is withholding documents, a substantial number of documents apparently, from this committee 3 months after they were ordered. They had a deadline of August 9th. And so therefore I'm going to move the following motion: that in relation to its order of reference of Thursday, May 9th, 2024, regarding the prima facie contempt concerning the People's Republic of China's cyber attack against members of Parliament, the Committee A make the following interim report to the House. Your committee wishes to express its displeasure with the refusals to give evidence by the Minister of National Defence and his predecessors, the President of the King's Privy Council for Canada, and Minister of Emergency Preparedness, and President of the Treasury Board and Minister of Transport, who each held responsibility for the communication security establishment at times material to the question of privilege, which the House referred to your committee on Thursday, May 9th, 2024, concerning the People's Republic of China's cyber attack. Isn't it part of a pattern, all of these questions of privilege relating to refusal of this government to turn over documents? And what did the Liberals do? What did the Prime Minister do? Well, he took the Speaker of the House, the member for Nipissing Temiskaming.
You have to say that to get it on the record because you have the floor.
Okay, colleagues,
we do not consent to adjourn.
Well, colleagues, I'm going to read the standing order here, okay? And in the standing order, 710, the committee chair cannot adjourn the meeting without the consent of a majority of members unless the chair decides that a case of disorder or misconduct is so serious as to prevent the committee from continuing its work. I don't know if I have the majority of committee members consenting to adjourn. So I'm looking around the table to see if I have I've read the standing order verbatim. So do I have, I'm looking to this side, I'm looking to the NDP, Madame Gaudreau. Okay. I don't have unanimous consent from the Conservatives, but I have consent of the majority of committee. So the meeting is adjourned.
That way, point of order doesn't work that way.